Have you ever heard of a country called Turkmenistan? I'm sure 99% of people have never even heard of it, but believe me, it rivals North Korea in terms of lack of freedom and the tyranny of its rulers. Imagine living in a country where the leader decides who can leave, dictates the color of citizens' cars, and even prohibits women from sitting in the front seat of vehicles. But that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the challenges women face here. Stay with us until the end of the video and discover more about this mysterious country that many consider to be hell on earth, located in Central Asia. Turkmenistan borders Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and the Caspian Sea to the west, spanning approximately 490,000 square kilometers. The country is largely dominated by the Karakum Desert, which covers about 70% of its territory, standing out as one of the largest arid regions in the world. Mountains and oases dot the landscape, adding diversity to the otherwise inhospitable terrain. Historically, Turkmenistan has been a strategic point on the Silk Road, the ancient trade network that connected Asia to Europe. Cities like Merv, once considered one of the largest in the Islamic world, were hubs of commerce, knowledge, and culture. This privileged position brought not only prosperity but also influences from various civilizations, including the Persians, Arabs, and Mongols. For centuries, the territory was dominated by foreign powers, culminating in its annexation by the Russian Empire in the 19th century, and later its transformation into a Soviet republic. Independence came only in 1991 following the collapse of the Soviet Union, when the country began to shape its modern identity. Despite this, many traces of the Soviet era remain visible in its infrastructure and political culture. The transition to an independent state was marked by an authoritarian regime that shaped the country's social and cultural landscape. This blend of nomadic heritage and Soviet remnants gives Turkmenistan a unique identity. The fusion of ancient traditions with controlled modernism reflects its struggle to balance historical legacy with contemporary ambitions. Beyond its fascinating history, Turkmenistan is known for the resilience of its people who endure life in one of the planet's most arid regions. The Karakum Desert, with its extreme conditions, symbolizes both the hardship and the strength required to survive in a country where the natural environment is as challenging as its complex history. The culture of Turkmenistan is a vibrant blend that combines ancient traditions with Soviet and Islamic influences. One of the most emblematic celebrations is Nowruz, the Persian New Year, marked by feasts, folk dances, and rituals, symbolizing renewal and prosperity. The festivities are filled with traditional dishes such as plov and local sweets, reflecting the characteristic hospitality of the Turkmen people. Weddings and grand events that unite families and communities are also pillars of cultural life. They blend Islamic traditions with local customs such as gift exchanges and celebrations that can last for days. It is common for ceremonies to take place in villages or large decorated halls with traditional music played on instruments like the dudur, setting the festive tone. Turkmenistan also bears traces of the Soviet era, visible in its monumental architecture and social policies that left deep marks on society. At the same time, the country preserves Islamic practices such as respect for daily prayers and the use of traditional clothing, especially in rural areas. This duality gives a unique quality to the national identity where the modern and the traditional coexist. The symbiosis between East and West is evident in the cities, where contemporary buildings shine alongside ancient bazaars. This interaction also appears in the arts and music, which combine Eastern melodies with more modern elements. Turkmenistan is both the guardian of its traditions and a society seeking to open itself to the world, albeit in a controlled manner. At the heart of this cultural richness are the people whose resilience and warmth reflect centuries of adaptation to adversity, living in a territory marked by the aridity of the desert and the historical abundance of external influences. The term Turkmen find in the preservation of their culture a source of pride and identity that keeps them connected to their roots. The economy of Turkmenistan is heavily based on natural resources and agriculture, with a focus on natural gas and cotton. The country has one of the largest natural gas reserves in the world, and the export of this resource is crucial for generating revenue. Cotton production, often referred to as white gold, is also an economic pillar with vast irrigated plantations in arid regions. These sectors sustain the economy, but their profits rarely reflect in the population's quality of life. Despite the abundance of hydrocarbons, the wealth generated is concentrated in the hands of a few, accentuating social inequality. A large portion of the population lives in modest conditions, while the profits from natural gas finance ambitious and luxurious infrastructure projects aimed at enhancing the country's international image. This disparity is worsened by a lack of transparency and the centralized management of the government, which monopolizes resources and controls all aspects of the economy. State administration restricts private initiative and maintains tight control over the market. Agriculture, for example, is heavily regulated, and farmers have little autonomy, often forced to grow cotton to meet national quotas. This creates economic dependence that limits the development of other sectors and prevents an equitable distribution of profits. Social problems arising from this management include significant poverty rates disguised as unemployment and limited access to quality basic services such as health and education. Modern infrastructure in cities like Ashgabat starkly contrasts with rural areas, where the population struggles to access basic resources. These inequalities expose a mismatch between the country's economic potential and the well-being of its citizens. Despite centralized economic control, Turkmenistan has sought to expand its trade partnerships, especially with countries like China, its primary importer of natural gas. However, the lack of internal reforms and the concentration of power continue to limit the positive impact the economy could have on the population's lives, perpetuating a reality of deep contrasts. The political regime of Turkmenistan is characterized by an authoritarian system where government control permeates all aspects of citizens' lives. The government imposes strict censorship on the media, restricting access to information and allowing only content approved by the state to circulate. The internet is heavily monitored, with foreign websites and platforms frequently blocked, limiting freedom of expression and creating an environment of constant surveillance. Individual freedom in the country is severely restricted with policies that discourage dissent and harshly punish any criticism of the government. Human rights organizations frequently point to the lack of a vibrant civil society and the repression of alternative political movements. This control extends to citizens' private lives, who often live in fear of reprisals from the authorities. Among the bizarre rules imposed by the country are the prohibition of black cars and the restriction on women driving. Imagine living in a place where the color of cars and the ability to drive are decided by government decrees. These peculiarities reflect a regime that seeks to control even the most trivial aspects of daily life. The ban on black cars is one of the most notorious rules and was implemented with the justification that white cars bring good luck. This measure led many vehicle owners to repaint their cars to avoid fines or confiscation. The sight of streets filled with white cars may seem surreal to visitors, but it is an everyday reality for Turkmen people. This rule not only imposes an extra cost on citizens but also exemplifies the meticulous control exercised by the government over personal lives. Another central element of the regime is the cult of personality surrounding its leaders. Since independence, figures such as Spar Murat Niyazov, known as Turkmenbashi, have been exalted in almost divine terms. Monuments in his honor are scattered throughout the country, including a famous golden statue that rotates to follow the sun. His legacy is taught in schools, and national celebrations often revolve around his achievements and ideals. This cult of personality is also reflected in the current administration, which continues to use symbols and propaganda to consolidate power. Books written by the leaders are treated as sacred texts, mandatory in the school curriculum, and frequently cited as references for political and social decisions. This veneration is an effective tool for reinforcing authority and diverting attention from the country's structural problems. The impact of this regime on Turkmenistan is profound, creating a society that, although rich in resources, lives under rigid and oppressive control. Political repression combined with the cult of personality contributes to an environment of stagnation and isolation, where national identity is shaped more by adoration of the leader than by active participation of its people. Women in Turkmenistan face a reality of oppression that reflects the authoritarian policies of the regime. Despite being a crucial part of society, their basic rights are frequently neglected, living in an environment that severely restricts their personal and social freedom. For example, many women are prohibited from working in certain fields or holding leadership positions, keeping them in a position of economic and social dependency. Control over women's appearance is another shocking aspect of Turkmen reality. Recently, there have been reports of policies banning women from wearing Western clothes or excessive makeup. Additionally, there are reports of public surveillance, where authorities regulate women's behavior in public spaces, imposing strict dress codes and even limiting gender interactions. Forced marriages continue to be a common practice, especially in rural areas, where families negotiate unions to secure economic or social advantages. Many young women have their destinies decided without consent, being forced to abandon their studies and take on the roles of wives and mothers at an early age. This perpetuates a cycle of inequality, restricting access to education and limiting opportunities for emancipation. Domestic violence is another serious issue, amplified by the lack of legal protection. There are no specific laws to combat gender-based violence, and many victims are discouraged from seeking help due to social stigma and the inefficiency of the judicial system. This situation creates an environment of silence and impunity, where perpetrators rarely face consequences. Moreover, access to health care for women is alarmingly limited, especially when it comes to reproductive care. Restrictive government policies prohibit or hinder access to contraceptive methods, forcing many women to resort to unsafe procedures. These challenges illustrate the brutal reality women face daily in a system that neglects and silences them. When I mentioned at the beginning of the video that many consider Turkmenistan to be hell on earth, I wasn't exaggerating. In a dish completely subjugated by an authoritarian regime, there is a place known as the gateway to hell. The Darvesa crater, located in the heart of the Karakum Desert, is a massive flaming depression that has been burning continuously for over 50 years, attracting curious onlookers and defying the imagination. This crater, about 70 meters in diameter and 20 meters deep, was the result of a Soviet operation in the 1970s when engineers tried to explore natural gas deposits. After an unexpected soil collapse, gas began to escape in large quantities. To prevent an environmental catastrophe, they decided to set it on fire, believing the flames would die down within a few days. However, decades later, the fire still burns intensely, fueled by the region's vast underground resources. The scene is surreal. During the day, the crater emits smoke that mixes with the scorching heat of the desert, while at night, the orange glow of the flames lights up the emptiness around it, creating a vision that is both hypnotizing and terrifying for many. It symbolizes not only Turkmenistan's abundant natural resources but also humanity's recklessness in dealing with nature despite its accidental origin. The Darwaza crater has become an unlikely tourist attraction, drawing adventurers who brave the desert's isolation to witness this hell on earth up close. The Turkmen government even attempted to promote the site as a tourist destination amid the country's restrictions, but the remote access and bureaucratic difficulties deter most visitors. However, the future of the crater remains uncertain. Local authorities have considered extinguishing the fire, citing safety reasons and gas conservation, but until that happens, Darwaza continues to burn, serving as a powerful reminder of the destructive and fascinating force of nature and human interference. So hopefully you did enjoy the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for more videos like this one. We will see you in the next video. Thank you.